people always seem to live long lives, don't they? The Kissingers and the Father Bushes and the David Rockefellers and the Queen Mother in England lived to 102, and the Queen in England now is well of age, because they're not given the same treatment, health treatment the rest of us get. One of the bloody reasons, and also other things that they do which are very dark, satanic, and to do with the energy of children. But Father George Bush, he's such a classic purveyor of this madness, this insanity that they want to impose upon the world. And as presidents go, he's a bit higher up the ladder than, say, his son or some of the others. And I would want to confront him with not just questions about his role through the years in so many things, because coming from a bloodline family, he would have been brought from birth. He would be developed to be in the positions that he was in, head of the CIA, and vice president, president, and all these other things that he was involved in. But there's another area of Father George Bush which is something that a lot of conspiracy research doesn't cover, but really needs to, and that is pedophilia. It's a deep rabbit hole, but when you connect the dots, you can explain why the ratio of pedophiles to positions of power, especially in the higher levels, is fantastic compared with the ratio of pedophiles in the general population. But this man, Father George Bush, has not just been responsible for the most unspeakable, grotesque, unimaginable sexual abuse and torture of children using various electromagnetic technologies and such that cause enormous pain for the kids who are tortured. This guy's been responsible for the deaths of goodness knows how many children. And I've met some of the adults that he abused as children and survived, and they are absolutely scrambled mentally, emotionally, and physically because of the horrors that this man put them through. Now, there's a number of reasons, Luke, why we need to look at this and expose this. First of all, to stop the kids having that done to them, but also to let people see into the minds and the mentality of those that are behind this global conspiracy. But there is something about their genetics which has deleted empathy. It's deleted the ability to feel the consequences for others of your actions. And if you think about it, empathy is the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. Because if I have empathy, feelings for how you will feel from my actions, then there is an immediate limit on my actions. I'm not going to do something to you because I have empathy with how it will make you feel. Delete that, there are no limits. So I've said to people for nearly 20 years, don't look at these people and judge what they would do on the basis of what you would do, because it's not the same thing. You know, orchestrating attacks on 9/11, which killed 3,000 people, around 3,000 people. But the empathy with not only those that died and those that suffered horrors in those buildings as they collapsed, but all the families. We could never do that. Delete empathy, and 3,000 people dead on 9/11, and you know, so what? That's the attitude that they have, and people can't kind of understand that. They think No, 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 they would never do that. Well, hold on a second. If you will take a little child before the age of 6, 5 or 6 is when they want them, you will put them into mind control projects that involve grotesque trauma, emotionally, mental and physically trauma. And you will sexually abuse them. You will use cattle prongs to as a punishment and as a way of getting them into a state of total submission to your will. You will torture them. You will make them watch animals and children being sacrificed as a form of incredible trauma. You'll find out their greatest fear and you'll make them experience it over and over again to break them mentally and emotionally. And you will do that over and over and over again. That's Father George Bush, and he's just one of them. You would pepper bomb Baghdad and have no emotional consequences. You would do 9/11, have no emotional consequences. You would put a virus out there to kill large numbers of people, no emotional consequences. You would put stuff in vaccines designed to affect people mentally, emotionally, and physically. You would have a eugenics operation. You would plan and scheme to dramatically reduce the population, and you would have no empathy with the consequences of your actions that others would feel. That's the mentality, Luke, that we're dealing with. And because they're not like the general human population. They don't see the world and they don't see life in the same way. And that's the force we're dealing with. And we need to get streetwise to that. And then we'll have a chance of dealing with it. Because why we say, they'd never do that. No, you'd never do that. They do it every day.
Now, I've been investigating and exposing the global paedophile ring of what you might call, not really, but it's what it's called, the elite of the world. And it is a global paedophile ring, not rings, in the end. The big one I'm talking about, the elite one. There are obviously aspects of it in different parts of the world, but in the end, it is part of one global ring. And there's reasons for this. There's reasons for the obsession with paedophilia and child abuse, which I go into in the books. Because what does that do? It silences people. And what does the abuse and ridicule and dismissal of those seeking to expose the paedophile networks, what does that do? It silences them. Now, if we are going to bring to the surface what is really happening to children worldwide on a staggering scale, then what we need first of all and primarily, bottom line, is the free flow of information, the free flow of opinion, and the free flow of information. Now, we are not going to have that if all that happens when anyone questions even some details of someone else's view, i.e., let's talk about, in this case, Pizzagate, that they are going to be subjected to what they are being subjected to now. Because what that means is you're blocking the free flow of opinion and the free flow of information by intimidating people into silence, which is exactly how this whole paedophile network globally has been kept under wraps all this time. And I say that from the perspective of knowing for a long time, more than 20 years now, that these elite paedophile rings in the end ring exist, and that they connect into the child sacrificing satanic rings. Going back as far as 1998, I published this book, The Biggest Secret, which named people like the former Prime Minister of Britain, Edward Heath, as a paedophile and Satanist. And the passage in the book was read to him. He was still an MP, Member of Parliament at the time. Was read to him in the week of publication. What did he do? Nothing. Why? Because it was true. And it took nearly 20 years for a police investigation triggered by other sources, not mine, to start into the child abuse allegations against Edward Heath. Of course, now, as with all aspects of this child abuse, paedophilia revelation in Britain that came out after the revelations about the BBC entertainer and record-breaking paedophile Jimmy Savile.
Die Enthüllungen über den Westminster-pädophilen Ring bezogen sich auf die Amtszeit von Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher war sehr eng mit Jimmy Savile befreundet. Und Jimmy Savile war innerhalb des inneren Zirkels ein Busenfreund der britischen Königsfamilie. Er wurde in den 60er Jahren in den inneren Zirkel hineingebracht von Lord Mountbatten, Mitglied der Königsfamilie und ein bekannter Pädophiler.
And politicians in this control system, again, this is why paedophilia is rampant among the political classes. This is what the Satanist confession said as well, that Australian guy. Politicians are introduced by a carefully graded set of criteria and situations that enable them to accept that their victims, children, will be our little secret. Young children sexually molested and physically abused by politicians worldwide are quickly used as sacrifices. In Australia, the bodies are hardly ever discovered, for Australia is still a wilderness. In countries that are not a wilderness, they control the mortuaries and the crematoria where they get rid of children who they want rid of because of what's happened.
It's all an illusion. And it's an illusion that we can enjoy, or it's an illusion that can control us. But what has happened is that we have forgotten that we are the dream and the dreamer. And the dream has taken over. And the dream has led us to believe that we are a part. We think in terms of parts, not whole. We think in terms of David Icke, not infinite consciousness. And therefore, we've got caught in an illusory trap of division. Think of an eddy or whirlpool in a river. It's part of the river, but it's in a different state of reality. It's not flowing with the river, it's in its own little world. And as it said, as long as the circumstances remain the same, that eddy will just keep going round and round and round and round. Only when the circumstances change, the flow changes, will it become flowing back into the river again and become the oneness. And when it started, this voice started talking to me, it opened up by saying, there's only one thing you really need to know. Infinite love is the only truth. Everything else is illusion. And in my mind, I went to say everything, and I got halfway through, it said, everything else is illusion. Because what it was saying was, the only truth is the existence of this infinite one consciousness, which is all-loving, all-knowing, all-wise, the harmonious amalgamation of all. Everything else is the imagination of that consciousness made manifest, illusion. We have a dream and we wake up and we say, oh, I had this amazing dream. Well, the only difference between that and this is we believe this dream is real. And of course, in the dreams, when we fall off the edge of cliffs, we just wake up, we're all right. We don't get splattered on the rocks because it's just a dream. But we do here because we believe in the limitations of this dream, and therefore we experience the limitations of this dream.